Before the game started, I realised there was a problem. 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the game started, I knew there was a problem with the crowd.
Since that harrowing day at Hillsborough in 1989, where 96 football fans lost their lives after being crushed in the Leppings Lane end, the government had to step in to make football safer for everyone involved, from the players on the pitch to the fans in the stands. The 1980s was a turbulent time in regard to football hooliganism, which brought in the fences around the pitch, and with football stadiums becoming dilapidated around the country and more fans coming to watch their team, a disaster like Hillsborough was just waiting to happen. Since the Taylor Report in 1990, which led to all top-flight teams introducing all-seater stadiums, football-related arrests and banning orders had been on a steady decline, with the game becoming more family-friendly. However, some football fans argue that the atmosphere which was generated in the old terraces is fading away, making the whole football experience less exciting, which affects their team's performance on the pitch and not having that extra boost coming from the stands to make their team win. Safe standing has been an ever-present topic over the past few years, and its possible introduction into the English game. It is widely used in Germany's top league, the Bundesliga, with examples such as Borussia Dortmund's infamous yellow wall, with huge success. I wanted to find out more about safe standing and what impact it could have on the English game. I'm here at Ashton Gate, home of Bristol City, to speak to John Dark, and who is an advocate for safe standing and has been campaigning with the Safe Standing Roadshow for many years. I'm here to find out more about safe standing and why it should be introduced, and if it is likely to happen in the near future. What got you interested into introducing safe standing in the UK?
I hate things that are illogical, and the ban on standing at selected football grounds in this country is totally illogical. If standing up at a venue, a public assembly, was not safe, you wouldn't be allowed to stand up at the last night of the proms in the Albert Hall. You wouldn't be allowed to stand up across the city at Bristol Rovers games. You wouldn't be allowed to stand up when this ground here stages rugby games or pop concerts. You wouldn't be allowed to stand up at Brentford in the Championship. It's ridiculous that it's supposedly unsafe to stand up at some football grounds, but perfectly safe to stand up at other ones. Unsafe to stand up at a football ground when it's hosting a football game, but safe to stand up at it when it's hosting any other sort of event. From 10 years ago, when kind of the safety authorities were some of our biggest opponents, now in fact the safety authorities are our biggest champions, because they have recognised that it's impossible for stewards to get a crowd of 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people who are standing up to sit down. So it's far better to accept they're going to stand up and then find a way to make that as safe as possible. A handful who are still not on board are mostly the ones who are blinkered and still think what we're talking about is huge swaying terraces of the 1970s and have in their heads Hillsborough, and even though the sort of logical reasonable side of their mind will know that it's been proven by the coroner's court and even way back when the Taylor Report, been proven over and over again that there was no causal link between the fact that the area the fans were approaching was a terrace and the death of the 96.
How much do you think it will improve the atmosphere?
A lot. I mean, opera singers don't sit down to sing, do they? They stand up. Church congregations don't sit down to sing hymns, they stand up. You know, to get the diaphragm free, to make a lot of noise, you've got to stand up. And okay, a lot of fans do stand up now behind normal seats, but then when the team scores a last minute winner, you can't really go berserk, because you know if you do, you're going to fall over the seat in front of you. If you've got rails in front of you and behind you, you can go as loopy as you like. You're not going to fall forward or get pushed from behind.
Celtic have put that in their specific Green Brigade section, and that seems to be going down well with the fans and the club and improving the atmosphere, which was already good anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's gone really well. And it isn't only the Green Brigade. I mean, it's nearly 3,000 seats they've got there in a sort of cheese wedge. And down the front of that cheese wedge is where the Green Brigade are, and they're probably maybe 500. They're the ones that really act as the catalyst to get the atmosphere going. But behind them, further back in that cheese wedge, you know, there are families, there are mums and dads, there are teenage kids, you know, not really young, tiny kids, because they'd be too short to see. That's logical. But it is a mix, and it certainly has improved the atmosphere. Even run-of-the-mill, Scottish League games where Celtic are winning at a canter, they tell me, you know, the atmosphere is bouncing around the ground because that area acts as a catalyst and gets the rest going. And even on a small scale here, just by having 1,000 fans in one corner here, unofficially standing up, but making a noise, it helps the atmosphere. So if you get formal standing areas where fans can get organised. If they want to do it European style with a drum and a megaphone and a capo and sort of ultra style support, it really can help get the stadium bouncing, even if the game itself is boring.
What do you hope for the future of football and in sport in general in regards to the safety?
I think every spectator of every sport should be able to go to the event, enjoy themselves and go home safely. And they should be able to go to the event and watch that event in the way they choose, whether that be standing up or sitting down. And I think within a year or two we'll have that at every football ground in the UK.
As John mentioned, there are two examples of where safe standing has been introduced. The first being north of the border at Celtic, where it has had an impact on the already massive atmosphere you get on match day at Celtic Park. The other example is here at New Meadow, home to Shrewsbury Town, who currently sit comfortably in League One. Despite not being one of the bigger clubs you expect, they made history on the 4th of August by becoming the first club in the English Football League to fully install safe standing. I'm here to speak to Roger Groves and Mike Davis, who are members of the Supporters Parliament here at Shrewsbury. They came to the club with the idea of Shrewsbury Town to become the first club in England and Wales to install a safe standing area, and they achieved that goal. Let's see what impact it has had on the club. Why did you both propose installing safe standing at the football club?
Well, going back probably 18 months, 2 years now, the regulations changed slightly to allow us to be one of the 29 clubs that could install it from an all-seater stadium, and it just felt like a good idea to have a look at, and it's something that I thought over the period of time it's going to grow and become more popular, and that was really the basis of it. And we just went to the football club and said, you know, let's have a look at this, let's see if it'll work for us, and we end up where we are today.
Why do you think it is a good idea?
I think football fans want to stand at football, whether that's done the right way or, as a lot of fans are doing now, what's classed as the wrong way, which is, you know, standing behind a normal seat. We just wanted to make it safer, really, for fans to be able to stand at football, and this was the one way of being able to do that, and give the fans that choice again to stand safely at football.
Was there any setbacks during the process of installing the safe standing?
The first thing we couldn't agree on was where we were going to put it, and then Mike got somebody in to do some sightline testing, and it became clear that we couldn't just pick a block and say, right, we'll put it in there, and that's why we've done it at the back of this stand behind the goal, because you're not interfering with anybody's view then, and you're not putting any restrictions in front of people, so that's why we've done it at the back of the stand for 6-7 rows down.
From what you've heard so far since this instalment, what do all the fans think of it?
Everyone's very positive. You know, we've had no complaints. I think the biggest thing was actually getting it okayed and getting it in. I think we were confident that once we did that the fans would take to it, and certainly in our situation, the ground has totally changed. The dynamics and the atmosphere in the ground have totally changed since we put it in. So yeah, everyone's been really, really positive.
I can see for myself that it seems very safe, and we'll find out in a bit for myself to see if it's very safe. So how long do you think it will take for clubs to realise, yeah, it's safe, so why we're not having it now? Why can't we install it within the next few years?
I don't think it'll take long. There's already movement towards that. As I said, Spurs have put in, was it 5,000 potential seating that can turn into rail seating of a type in their new stadium. Wolves are looking at it. I think, you know, if you ask me where my money would go, I would say Wolves could well be the next club to do it, and I think it will then create a domino effect. You know, clubs are waiting to see, if you like, a little bit more closure on stuff from the government about, you know, certainly the Hillsborough thing, and that was very much the right thing to do, but I think lots of clubs are now looking at it. You know, Celtic has been a massive success, and this has been a massive success for us at our level.
So we've spoken about it, let's see it in action. Shrewsbury play Oxford United today in a mid-table clash, and me being a Wigan fan, it doesn't affect me that much, but I'll be cheering on Shrewsbury today. The teams are on the way out here now. It's a big game for both teams. They're at similar positions here in the table. See all the fans bouncing in the stand. little lads on the drum there at the front. It looks impressive, this safe standing. So let's hope Shrewsbury get a win today for it. Oxford have played it through. Oh, they've got a goal. It's 1-0 Oxford against the run of play. Have to come back here, Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury on the attack. It's a good run, this. Oh, he's been nudged, he's gone down. Yeah, it's a penalty. There's no question there. And he scores. Good pen, 1-1. Don't we deserve really more than anything. Oh God. Terrible tackle, must be a red. And it is. There's no excuse for that. It's it. Yes. Two on Shrewsbury. I think we deserve. That's a crappy finish. Good first half from Shrewsbury. Good. What impact do you reckon the safe standing has had at Shrewsbury Town?
Well, it seems to have got the fans a bit noisier because you've got two sides now singing and they try and compete with each other. A lot less nasty banter, a lot of friendly banter from what I hear. Very, what's the word? Cordial around here. I don't have any trouble yet anyway.
Do you think it's improved the stadium?
Definitely, 100%.
Oh, the defence are asleep. He's through. And he's got it. 2-2, Oxford have equalised. 10 men. Cleared out by Oxford. Oh, they've done it again. He's through on goal again. Same mistake. That's what happens when you make mistakes. You can see sloppy goals like that. It's 3-2 to Oxford. So it wasn't the day for Shrewsbury, who lose to 10-man Oxford by 3-2. But the main thing to see was the atmosphere created by the safe standing section. The fans were in full voice. Seeing it for myself, it has had a change on the atmosphere at the stadium, and it seems for the better. Another thing that came from the game was the way the safe standing was controlled by the stewards, keeping the fans all safe. Fans with safe standing tickets had a special wristband to go in the section, and they showed the steward positioned at the entrance of the section so it didn't get overpopulated. This got me thinking of how football clubs measure and control the safety elements before, during and after a match to make sure everyone stays safe in this perimeter of the stadium. I went to speak to Rob Tinsley, who is the Chief Safety Officer at Anfield, home of Liverpool Football Club, one of the biggest clubs in England and in Europe, to see what goes on behind the scenes leading up to a game and on game day. Could you talk us through the process, what you have to do, like before, during and after a game?
Yeah, so pre-match, it'll kind of start, so if we have a game on the Saturday, the planning can start normally about a week before. So we'll be in contact with the police to see what the assessment of the fixture is. So they're all categorised between A and C, A being the kind of lower risk and C being the high risk game. So we'll look at what staffing we need for that. So the police are responsible for the public order stuff outside the stadium and to a certain extent inside as well. And then on top of that, what I'll do is look at the right number of stewards, because we have to, through our safety certificate, have a certain amount of stewards as a standard kind of across the board, no matter what fixture. But then on top of that, if we play somebody like Napoli or someone where it's a high risk, I'll have more stewards. So that kind of starts on the Monday, and it's a bit of a slow burn up until, say, midweek, when we look at any intelligence that comes in around any threat from the away fans coming in, and then put a plan together normally about the Thursday as to what we're going to do on the Saturday, so make sure that everybody has a great time.
How has the attitude towards safety changed over time in football?
Yeah, huge. I mean, there's obviously some big events, hasn't there, that have really impacted on what we do on match day. If you look back at Hillsborough and what that looked like and the processes that were in place compared to now, safety is the kind of golden thread through everything. So that's the foundation for whatever the club does, and it's always based on safety first, and commercialism and everything else second. So I think the attitude of everybody, not just within the safety team, has changed for the better.
While you've been here, have you experienced, or even at Man City as well, have you experienced any major incidents?
Yeah, so we've had a few really. More recently we played Red Star Belgrade in the Champions League, and literally, 4 hours before kick-off, we had a power failure. And that's not just the kind of ovens that go off, it's everything else. It's the stadium lights, it's the electricity that provides the lifts to get people in and out. So up until about an hour before kick-off, because it was a UEFA game, we were having conversations between here and Geneva with UEFA whether the game could safely go ahead. And it was literally on a knife edge whether we could get the sufficient power for the fixture to go ahead. So we had to delay the opening of the stadium to assess it, because what we didn't want to do was get a load of people in and then having to evacuate them when we didn't have the lifts to do it, or the power or the lighting, etc. So it was a bit of a close call really, but to say it was a nervous night was perhaps an understatement. So yeah, that was demanding for those reasons. And then we've had other events where weather has played an issue as well, to the point that some of the stadium we thought would not be safe to use because of the high winds. So yeah, it's been challenges.
Would you say you treat, because when away fans come, because you don't know what they're going to be like you know what your own fans are like, do you treat them any differently compared to the home fans, or exactly the same?
Exactly the same. And do you know what, otherwise what does that breed in it? When we send our fans somewhere else, if I don't know, say we get a load of fans from Watford and we treat them worse than we would our own, what's the consequences for them going down there? And do you know what, they're all football fans that deserve the same. And if probably we don't bend over more for them, but we're trying to accommodate their needs more to make sure they have a great time as well, because they're only coming to Anfield perhaps for the first time. So it's going that extra mile to make sure that they know where they're going, and that they're met and greeted well. So
and make sure that they come back as well if they're treated well.
That's it.
Is football a lot safer now, and could it get any more safer than it currently is?
Yeah, do you know what? There's always ways, isn't there, of making stadiums safer and better. If we suddenly thought, right, that's it, and put a full stop after the word safety and thought there's not more we can do, then that's a bit of a dark day. So there's always ways and means of looking for improvements. And if you look this season at the kind of pitch runners, that kind of stuff, people getting on the pitch, it was almost going back to the day of, do we put a fence around the pitch and things like that? And is there a way of keeping people off the pitch safely? Is there a fix for that going forward? So there's always ways of looking at better ways and things to improve it. And when we travel to Europe, we always look at other stadiums to see if there's things that they do differently to improve what we do here.
An insight to the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes at a football club to keep everyone safe, really showing how football has come in regard to safety over the years. I realised after speaking to the people involved that one word kept coming up, which was the major reason why huge safety measures came into play. On the 15th of April 1989, an FA Cup semi-final match between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest was supposed to take place, but after 5 minutes the game was abandoned after Liverpool fans came onto the pitch from the Leppings Lane end of the ground.
And the police are on the pitch to tell the referee to stop the proceedings, because there is danger here that the crowd is going to encroach upon the pitch because of overcrowding at the back of the goal, and the referee is taking the players off the field. So this FA Cup semi-final has been interrupted after 6 minutes because of crowd problems here. Capacity of Hillsborough 54,101, and it would appear that too many of them are on that terrace behind Bruce Grobbelaar's goal. And Ray Lewis, the referee, is doing the sensible thing in taking the players away off the pitch until the South Yorkshire Constabulary sort out the problem.
What wasn't realised at the time was the tragedy that was occurring in the pens behind the goal. They were overcrowded with fans after crowd mismanagement by the police outside of the ground. People started to crush in the stand and up towards the fence that was placed behind the goal, which stopped the fans from invading the pitch. One of the Liverpool fans there that day was Arthur Swift, who I spoke to as he recalled the events of what happened on one of football's worst ever tragedies. Could you talk us through the events and what happened that day and where you were?
Yeah, I was in the centre terrace in the Leppings Lane end. I feel that the problem started way before kickoff. The year before when we played there, there's a gateway from the main road, and when you pass through that gateway, you're in an area, an apron if you like, before the turnstiles, which channels from the main road. It channels narrower towards the turnstiles. The previous year, semi-final, we were there. The police checked the tickets outside on the main road, and the queue was on the road, and so you showed your tickets, and then you walked across this apron, if you like, and then through the turnstiles, so crowds were not gathering. There'd be a few people standing around, you know, waiting for pals and what have you. But that particular year, there wasn't a manned gate on the main road. The fans were just allowed to pour into this area that narrowed as you got further towards the turnstiles. The space narrowed, and I feel that's where the problem started. The policing from the previous year to the day of the tragedy. People were allowed through the gates, and it was just mayhem. The crush started. I was in the ground I got through the turnstiles about 20 minutes before kick-off, 20 minutes, half an hour, and I sort of got pushed through the turnstile to get in, and then it was just a natural. I wasn't in that stand, in that terrace the year before, but I passed it. My brother was in there, so I know they were checking the tickets there. I went in, and it was sort of natural progression. There weren't any stewards on the other side of the turnstile saying go left or right. It was just you walk through, and there's a tunnel facing you, and you just go through the tunnel to the terrace. That's what I did. When I got on that terrace, and I thought, oh my, packed here. You couldn't really see to the left or right. You would, because of the fences and the people and the amount of people that were in that. You couldn't turn around and go back out. I made my way to the front, to the corner near the front, and I went on to the left-hand side. Before the game started, I realised there was a problem. 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the game started, I knew there was a problem with the crowd. And when I got over to the left-hand side, I could see into the other side of the terrace, and it was plenty of room. There were people standing with acres of space. So, and the crush was really bad then, and I pulled myself out of up the fence, and the crush was that bad. My trousers were coming off me as I'm pulling myself out. And I pulled myself out, and there was a policeman who was an older guy, and I said to him about, there's a massive crush there, you need to open the gate. But it turns out, I think the gate opened inwards and not outwards. And I could see his reluctance I knew he was reluctant to do anything, to let the crowd out onto the pitch because of, things that had happened in the past, pitch invasion and what have you. So, I went over to the other side, climbed out onto this, and sat on the terrace, and I was sitting on the ground trying to get my breath back, because it was a massive effort to haul myself out. And then the game had started, and as we know, there was a massive crush, and people climbing out up through the stands, people were getting pulled out. The police were actually ineffective. They didn't know how to handle it. And what's going on here, saying that they burst the gates down. But as I say, that problem started way before kickoff. It started outside on the road because they didn't release the fans into that pen to go through the turnstiles in an orderly fashion. It was just gates thrown open,
Dozens of soccer fans have been injured, and it's feared some killed when they were crushed by overcrowding at the FA Cup semi-final match between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest this afternoon at Hillsborough in Sheffield. It appears that non-ticket holders were able to get in, together with legitimate ticket holders at the Liverpool end of the field. Advertising hoardings were used to take away the injured.
How has it affected you since?
obviously I was a bit morose for a long time afterwards, and I hadn't been married that long, and my wife knew I was struggling with it, mentally. But I was one for blocking it off, and I just wouldn't have it mentioned in the house. Just didn't want to talk about it. My wife knew how I felt, and she used to, if we were going somewhere and he knew I was at Hillsborough, I know my wife used to, go on ahead, or if you like, just say, don't mention Hillsborough. I did have one breakdown, when I say one breakdown, I just, burst into floods of tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very hard, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not something I've talked about for many years.
No.
But yeah, it was just a shocking thing, I couldn't believe it. I travelled to the game with 3 other guys. One of the guys got me a ticket before the match on the Friday night. Phoned me up, got you the ticket, great. Travelled up with them, and met them after the game. Well, not after the game. Obviously, the game was abandoned. I was dazed, sitting in the ground. I knew where we parked the car. There were people running about. The sights I saw there, live with me forever. Horrific. I don't feel that the authorities did enough. They didn't know what to do. They were confused. The police for the first, I don't know how many minutes, they were just in a line across the pitch around the halfway line. This after the players had been taken off, and all standing, linking arms. They weren't administering first aid. They thought, we've been told to stay here. There's something happening. Is hooligan element? Is that starting again? And it was a while before it was the fans that were administering first aid. And even a photographer, I saw the photographer put his stuff down, and help a girl, he was giving trying to resuscitate her. And it was just horrific to see all those people with a t-shirt pulled up over their face, that they'd already gone.
Since then, safety's come a long way, as we know, since Hillsborough. So what do you think the general attitude towards football in regards to safety is like now compared to back then?
It's it's unbelievable. I didn't go to the games for a few years. After the Taylor report, we had all-season stadiums, but it wasn't. All the other obstacles had been removed, and the crush barriers, they were always a problem anyway. Stood on the cop for many years, a goal would be scored, but at least you had a bit of the crowd right across. There was no fence in between. Everyone knew where we were supposed to be. See, what you've got to remember at Hillsborough, most of the fans that went there had never been there before, had no idea that if you go down that tunnel, you're stuck in one part of the terrace. Obviously everyone knows their own ground best. We've come on leaps and bounds, and you've got to applaud the football authorities for spending the money to upgrade the grounds to make them safer. I'm more than happy with the changes that have been implemented. I'm delighted with them. And I really enjoy going to the games, and hopefully it will continue for many years. I love me football.
Speaking to Arthur was a real eye-opener to what happened at Hillsborough, and showed me how far safety in football has come to stop incidents like this from happening again. The Hillsborough inquests are still going on to reveal the full truth, which was silenced for many years after the disaster. I hope that the fight is won and can finally bring justice to the families and the football club who lost loved ones that day. One thing was for sure though, everyone I spoke to fully believed into the advancement of safety in football since Hillsborough, and the attention to detail that goes into keeping everyone safe. There'll always be arguments to say how safe we actually are when we go to games, and there'll always be incidents that make us question safety. But after what I've heard, we have to acknowledge how far we have come to make sure that the beautiful game is enjoyed by everyone safely.